Sabalenka and Eala explode courtside, and the cameras caught everything. What started as a tense rally turned into a moment the tennis world will never forget. One glare, one shout, one line call that changed the entire match. Crowds gasped, microphones picked up the chaos, and neither player backed down. Sabalenka's temper, Eala's defiance, two forces colliding under pressure. It wasn't just about points anymore. It was about pride. Behind every serve, every stare, there was something deeper, something boiling beneath the surface. When security stepped in, it was already too late. The world had seen it all. Clips spread online in minutes. Fans divided, legends weighed in. Now everyone's asking the same question. What really happened courtside that day? It began long before the explosion, long before the crowd gasped and the headlines took over. This tension had been simmering quietly, match after match, glance after glance, between Aryna Sabalenka, the reigning powerhouse of women's tennis, and Alexandra Eala, the young star determined to carve her name into that same elite space. Sabalenka had always been known for her intensity, a player who played with fire, emotion, and unapologetic power. Her roar could shake a stadium. Her glare could silence a camera. She wasn't just a competitor. She was a storm. Eala, on the other hand, represented something different. Precision, calm, control. A rising player who carried the dreams of a new generation. Her game was built on focus and discipline. Where Sabalenka burned hot, froze time. Their paths first crossed months earlier on the tour, a handshake that barely lasted a second. But those who saw it knew something unspoken started there. Maybe it was the contrast of personalities. Maybe it was the way I didn't flinch when Sabalenka's shots thundered past her. Or maybe it was the whispers that the next big name in tennis was coming from the Philippines. And she wasn't afraid of the old guard. Fast forward to this match, a high-stakes clash at a packed arena under humid lights. The kind of night where legends are made or broken. Sabalenka came in as the favorite, but wasn't intimidated. Reporters noted how calm she seemed in warm-ups. Earbuds in, eyes locked, her expression unreadable. Sabalenka, though, was different. Restless, pacing, muttering to herself. Her coach's voice echoed from the sidelines. Breathe. Just play your game. The first few games were electric. Every rally had meaning. The sound of the ball hitting strings felt heavier, sharper, like each shot carried a message. Eala broke Sabalenka's serve early, and for the first time, the top seed looked rattled. A flash of frustration, a clenched fist. The crowd sensed it. The storm was coming. Commentators began to whisper about the tension between them. One remarked, "There's no love lost here. You can feel it. This is personal." The score tightened. Sweat glistened under the lights. Eala's calm confidence only made Sabalenka angrier. A dangerous mix for someone who played on emotion. When I walked past Sabalenka during a changeover and their shoulders brushed slightly, cameras caught the glare. Sabalenka turned, jaw tight, eyes cold. The audience didn't know it yet, but that look and that single flash of defiance would be the spark that set everything ablaze. And as the chair umpire called time, both women stepped back onto the court with something heavier than strategy or technique. This was no longer just tennis. This was pride, reputation, and emotion colliding under the lights. And the explosion was only moments away. It happened in a heartbeat, the kind of moment that defines rivalries forever. The score was 43 in the second set, tension slicing through the air like static. Eala was serving, her eyes calm, her rhythm flawless. But Sabalenka was restless, pacing between points, rolling her shoulders, glaring at her opponent like she was trying to break her with her stare alone. Then it happened. The call. Eala's serve clipped the line. A blistering ace down the tee. The crowd erupted, but Sabalenka's hand shot up instantly. "Out!" she shouted toward the umpire. Disbelief written across her face. The chair umpire, composed but cautious, shook his head. The ball was good. For a moment there was silence. That dangerous kind of silence before chaos. Sabalenka walked toward the net, arguing, her voice sharp. That was out. Everyone saw it. Eala, standing on her baseline, didn't move. She simply stared back, expression cold, almost detached. And that was the trigger. Sabalenka hated being ignored, especially on court, especially under the lights. She turned toward Eala. "You think that was in?" Eala finally answered, her voice low, but cutting. The umpire made the call. "Play." The audience gasped, not at what she said, but how she said it. Calm, controlled, like she was the adult in the room. Sabalenka's jaw clenched. Cameras zoomed in on her expression. Fury, disbelief, pride colliding all at once. Then came the next serve. Eala tossed the ball high, struck it clean. Another ace, same spot. This time, Sabalenka didn't challenge. She swung her racket through the air in frustration. Missing the ball she'd thrown up to serve next, the crowd murmured. You could feel it, the energy shifting, something unraveling. Commentators tried to keep up. Sabalenka's losing focus here. One said she's letting emotion take over. On the next point, Sabalenka hit a forehand winner. But as Eala passed her, their shoulders brushed again. Only this time, Sabalenka turned fully toward her. Watch where you're walking, she snapped. AA didn't break stride. Play the ball, not the player. And just like that, it exploded. Sabalenka dropped her racket, walking toward Eala, shouting words the microphones only half caught. The umpire stood up, calling for calm. Security moved in closer, not yet on court, but ready. The crowd was buzzing, phones out, cameras recording, every angle, trying to capture the moment the composure cracked. Even coach stood, motioning for her to step back, but she didn't move. Two players, one fueled by rage, one rooted in defiance, standing just meters apart, refusing to blink. Then came the final spark as the umpire called code violation. Verbal abuse, Miss Sabalenka. The stadium erupted into chaos. Boos, cheers, applause. No one knew whose side they were on. Sabalenka's reaction. She laughed. Cold, sarcastic, dangerous. And the cameras rolling from every direction caught the exact moment Aryna Sabalenka, the world's top player, snapped. Eala turned away, jaw tight, but the damage was done. The calm had shattered. The match had transformed into a battle, not of skill, but of ego. Within minutes, the footage was everywhere. Clips from fans' phones, slow-motion replays from broadcast cameras, each showing the same thing. Aryna Sabalenka, storming toward Alexa, shouting across the net while officials scrambled to restore order. The internet doesn't wait for explanations. It creates its own. On Twitter, hashtags like an Eala Sabalenka and tennis meltdown shot to the top within an hour. Some called it passion, others called it disgrace. One fan wrote, "This isn't competition, it's chaos. What happened to sportsmanship?" Another replied, "Sabalenka's fire is what makes her great. Don't turn her into a villain." But it wasn't just fans. Analysts, former players, and journalists all dove in. Tennis legend Chris Ever tweeted, "Emotions are part of the game, but respect should never leave the court." Meanwhile, a sports blogger wrote a viral headline. Eala stands tall. Even Sabalenka couldn't break her focus. Back at the tournament, the tension only grew. During the next changeover, the camera zoomed in on both benches. Sabalenka's coach leaned forward, whispering urgently, trying to ground her. Eala sat silently, towel over her head, refusing to even glance across the court. It was the quiet before another storm. Then came the replay on the giant screen. The shoulder bump. The crowd erupted as the moment played on loop. Sabalenka's glare. Eala's calm walk by gasps. Boos. Applause. The arena was divided right down middle. The umpire had to pause the match twice to settle the noise. At one point, Sabalenka shouted toward the crowd, something about respect. The microphones didn't pick it up clearly, but the emotion was unmistakable. She wasn't just fighting Eala anymore. She was fighting perception. The fear of being painted as the aggressor. Meanwhile, Eala's composure became her weapon. Each time Sabalenka lost her temper, Eala seemed to grow calmer, more unshakable, and fans noticed. A viral TikTok clip showed Eala walking back to her chair after a tense exchange captioned, "When calm is louder than chaos." Within hours, it had over 1 million views. Sports channels replayed the incident nonstop. Commentators debated who crossed the line. One anchor said, "We've seen Sabalenka emotional before, but this feels different. This feels personal." The press conference after the match only fanned the flames. Sabalenka's voice was tight when she said, "I'm emotional, yes, but I'm human. Everyone loses control sometimes." But Eala's statement hit differently. Calm, precise, almost surgical. "I'm here to play tennis. What happens outside the points? I'll let others decide." It was the quote heard around the world. The clip was replayed across networks, fans interpreting it as a subtle jab. A quiet way of saying Sabalenka had lost herself while Eala had kept her soul. By the next morning, Team Eala and Team Sabalenka were trending side by side, the digital equivalent of a divided arena. The story had outgrown the match. Now it was a movement, and both women, whether they liked it or not, had become symbols of something far bigger than tennis. The morning after the explosion, the world of tennis woke up to chaos. Headlines weren't about the scoreline. They were about the incident. Every major outlet ran it front and center. Sabalenka loses control. Eala's calm defiance steals the show. Clips from every angle flooded social media. Slow-motion edits, reaction memes, commentaries from people who hadn't even watched the match. Everyone had an opinion, and every opinion added more fuel. For Aryna Sabalenka, it was a nightmare unfolding in real time. Her team tried to manage the damage. Statements, clarifications, controlled interviews, but no amount of PR could silence the noise. Some sponsors privately expressed concerns about her on-court behavior. One brand even paused an upcoming campaign featuring her. For a player known for her power and dominance, this was different. It wasn't about her tennis anymore. It was about her temper. Sabalenka herself tried to downplay it. In one post-match interview, she said, "I play with emotion. That's who I am. I didn't cross the line. I reacted in the moment." But fans weren't convinced. The footage of her walking toward Eala, shouting, eyes blazing. It told its own story. Meanwhile, Eala's silence only amplified the narrative. She refused to comment beyond her short statement. No social media posts, no interviews, no reactions. And that silence, that restraint turned her into something more powerful than a winner. She became the calm in the storm, a symbol of composure, dignity, and quiet strength. But behind the calm, Eala's camp wasn't untouched. Her coach was reportedly called by tournament officials to review sportsmanship concerns, even though she hadn't instigated the clash. The organizers were under pressure to appear neutral, to show they were treating both players equally. It was politics, the kind that unfolds quietly behind closed doors. The Women's Tennis Association released a short statement. "We remind all athletes of the standards of conduct expected on court. Passion is welcome. Disrespect is not." It didn't name anyone, but everyone knew who it was aimed at. For Sabalenka, it stung. She had worked years to earn her reputation as a fighter, not a villain. Now every camera followed her differently. Every match dissected for hints of another outburst. During her next appearance, even a frustrated racket drop drew gasps from the crowd. For Eala, it was the opposite. Her following exploded overnight. Tens of thousands of new fans. Articles hailed her as the next mental giant of tennis. But with fame came pressure. She was suddenly the face of composure. The player who handled Sabalenka. Yet deep down, both women knew the world wasn't really interested in fairness or facts. It wanted drama. And their rivalry had just given it the perfect storm. As one journalist wrote, "It's not about who won the match anymore. It's about who won the moment." And in that moment, neither truly did. Days passed, but the tension didn't fade. It evolved. Behind the polished interviews and official statements, there was something deeper brewing between the two women. A mixture of regret, pride, and silence. For Aryna Sabalenka, the world suddenly felt smaller. She wasn't the hero of highlight reels anymore. She was the headline of controversy. Her team urged her to move on, to focus on the next tournament, but she couldn't. That one moment, that one stare down with Eala, kept replaying in her mind. Not because she hated her opponent, but because it reminded her of something she'd lost control. A leaked locker room report claimed Sabalenka stayed behind after the match, refusing to speak to anyone. She sat alone, still in her match kit, eyes red, head down. One official who saw her described it simply. She looked like someone who didn't recognize herself anymore. Meanwhile, Eala was navigating her own version of the aftermath. To the outside world, she had become the composed star, the face of discipline. But those close to her knew the truth. She wasn't untouched. She had cried that night, not from fear or guilt, but from exhaustion. She didn't want to be part of scandal. She wanted to be known for her game, not for someone else's meltdown. In a quiet press interview days later, she finally spoke, carefully, thoughtfully. "I respect Aryna as a player. Emotions can take over sometimes. I don't judge her for that, but I hope we all learn something from moments like these." That single quote changed the tone of the conversation. Fans who were ready to turn the rivalry into a war began to soften. Even Sabalenka saw it. According to a member of her team, she read Eala's words in silence, then whispered she didn't have to say that, but she did. 2 weeks later, fate or irony brought them together again, this time at a promotional charity event. Organizers had already braced for tension. But when Sabalenka saw across the room, she didn't look away. She walked over, extended her hand, and said quietly, "We both lost that day. Let's make sure it doesn't happen again." Eala nodded. Deal. There were no cameras rolling, no viral clips, just two athletes finding a sliver of peace in a world that only wanted conflict. But even after that handshake, the story refused to die. Every highlight reel, every tournament recap still used that same moment. Sabalenka's shout, Eala's stare, the explosion that divided the sport. Because the truth is, moments like these don't fade. They become part of tennis history. And as one commentator summed it up perfectly, tennis thrives on rivalry. But sometimes rivalry teaches us more about humanity than victory ever could. Time has a way of softening the noise, but not the memory. Months later, the echoes of that courtside explosion still linger, not just in highlight reels, but in how both players are seen. For Aryna Sabalenka, it became a moment of reckoning. Her next few tournaments showed a calmer, more composed version of herself. Reporters noticed it immediately. The fierce roars were still there, but something had shifted behind the eyes. She began speaking more openly about mental control, even saying in one interview, "I'm learning that power doesn't always have to come with fire. Sometimes strength is quiet." Those words struck differently. They came from a player who had lived through the chaos of her own emotions and survived it. For Eala, the incident became her unofficial arrival. She went from a rising talent to a global headline. Not because of a trophy, but because of her temperament under pressure. Sponsorships, invitations, interviews, they poured in. But what impressed fans most wasn't her success. It was that she never used the moment to humiliate or mock Sabalenka. She stayed silent, respectful, and focused. A rare kind of maturity for someone so young. As the season went on, fate brought them back together again. This time, not as enemies, but as professionals sharing the same stage. When they crossed paths at the Players' Lounge during the tour finals, there was no tension, no glare, just a small nod, a mutual recognition of everything that moment had taught them. Online, fans still debated. Some said Sabalenka had lost her cool. Others argued she was just passionate. But beyond the noise, one truth remained. That night had changed both women. Exposed the thin line between emotion and control, pride and patience, fire and frost. Sports will always remember the explosion, the shouts, the viral clips, the divided crowd. But those who look closer will see something else. A story of two players, both learning what it really means to stand on that thin line between glory and grace. In the end, tennis didn't lose. It gained a rivalry not built on hate but on growth. A rivalry that reminded fans why they watched the game in the first place. Not just for victory, but for humanity. Because beneath the bright lights, the applause, and the pressure, athletes aren't machines. They're human, capable of breaking, learning, and healing right in front of millions. And maybe that's why this story matters. Because it wasn't just a clash between two players. It was a mirror reflecting the fire, the flaws, and the fragile beauty of competition itself. What do you think? Was this rivalry born from chaos or from the kind of passion that keeps tennis alive? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more untold stories, rivalries, and emotional moments from the world of women's tennis, subscribe now, because this is only the beginning.